Welcome to Inclusive Collective, where we share stories and learnings of inclusive people, organizations, and innovation. I am your co-host, Nadia Butt. I'm an organizational development and belonging strategist. And as always, every week, joining me is co-host Rob Hadley, a people and culture strategist specializing in DE&I and people analytics. Hello, Rob.
Hey, Nadia, what is happening?
Well,
So great to see you.
so always so good to see you. Always the best parts of my week is to see you. But I do have a question for you.
Yeah, what's
Does
up?
it faze you at all that Taylor Swift and Travis Kelce are making headline news this week?
Wow, I did not see that coming.
I'm a Swiftie, so I got to bring it up. And you love sports, so
You know,
our worlds are colliding right here,
this
Rob.
is, I can tell you how big this story is that my parents were asking me about it. My dad actually texted me about the language. He was reading this interview from Micah Parsons, who's a linebacker for the Dallas Cowboys, talking about how Kelsey had shot his shot
Oh,
and going
okay.
on and on about it.
Yeah.
And my dad was like, "What is happening right now? What is going on in the
Yeah.
universe?" And I was like, I had to explain to him what happened with Kelsey and Taylor
And
Swift. So
Taylor and the dating. Yeah. You know what's really interesting though? Like this has to do a little bit with DE&I because apparently Kelsey. So Travis Kelce, for those folks, is a football player, I believe, on the Kansas City Chiefs.
yes,
Okay,
yes,
which we
got
gotta
it.
let's rename that team there. But anyways, apparently has been doing Bud Light commercials, and of course, the Bud Light boycott movement is basically going after Swift and Kelce. So it's a wild and interesting news headline that
Oh,
caught
good.
my
Definitely
eye.
go after the most powerful person in the world in Taylor Swift.
Yeah,
Definitely,
like don't
definitely.
mess with the Swifties. I'll tell you that right now.
Yeah, exactly. Good luck.
Yeah, good luck.
Good luck with that. Great stuff with Travis Kelce and Taylor Swift. This week, Nadia, on Inclusive Collective, we'll be talking to wellness expert and author Rikimah Glymph. We'll also discuss Latino economic power and repugnant market concerns in the talent acquisition markets. Later, we'll be ranting about U.S. Senator Tommy Tuberville and raving about our girl, I guess I should say woman, Beyonce.
Beyonce.
Yes.
Sure. And before we move on to the deets, Rob, I was hoping I could get 2 minutes of your time,
Oh,
particularly on measurement. So the question I have for you for coaching advice is how do you think about measuring inclusion?
so first, there's this misconception, I think, that it's difficult to measure inclusion, right? But it really can be measured effectively. And it starts by having a model of inclusion. And I always say that I'm model agnostic. I don't care what model you pick one. And then breaking down that model into its component parts and then measuring the parts of the model through the use of both sentiment and operational data, right? So it's much more common, and you're probably more familiar with it as well, for organizations to focus on the sentiment measures, so how employees feel on inclusion, um, than on the operational measures. But I always encourage everyone that I'm working with to do both, right? So sentiment will tell you how people feel about how included they are in their particular environment, and it will tell you what people think is happening. But the operational measures, they're going to tell you what's actually happening, okay, what's actually going on. And they work together beautifully. Like you really can use them both together, as sentiment measures will often be a leading indicator for operational measures. So, for example, Nadia, if you use a Gartner model, you may be familiar with this model for inclusion. They have an element in that of fairness. So, there are validated survey questions that we can use to assess fairness in an organization. But at the same time, there's a number of operational measures that people don't look at as much for fairness, such as pay equity, promotion rates. And those things are correlated to your survey question, right? And the results that you're getting on the survey. So it would be silly not to look at them together to really get a sense of what's happening in terms of inclusion in an organization. Does that help?
It totally does. That's great. Thanks for that, Rob. Okay, let's get to the deets.
Awesome. All right. So first, DEET, Nadia, it's Hispanic Latine Heritage Month, Hispanic Latino, if you prefer, Heritage Month. So I wanted to highlight this story. The U.S. Latino economy grew to $3.2 trillion in
Trillion.
2021. That's up from 2.8 trillion the year before. That's a huge number in terms of growth. I think there's probably some pandemic related impact in terms of like the
Facts.
growth,
Sure.
right? So going 2020 to 21, but a huge number. So if US Latinos were a country, then their GDP would rank fifth in the world. And the US
Wow.
Latino economy grew 2.5 times faster than the non Latino economy in this country, driving growth in California, Texas, and Florida, obviously, but also in places like South Dakota, North Dakota, and New Hampshire. Nadia, are you in US Latino
Oh,
economy?
I'm like 150% in. Yeah, like thanks for calling attention to this. Of course, the US Latino population, like you said, is growing and they are part of the seams of the US economy. And I think being strategic on how we consider continuing to encourage the economic growth of this community, I think includes acknowledging like the current strengths that it holds, like the industries. I think the article you sent to me, like the industries where they really have strengths in our food services, construction, administrative support, waste management, transportation. And I think we need to also consider their contributions in areas like entrepreneurship, venture capital, the arts, TV, film, creatives, right? So representation matters, and the US Latino community is an influential market and one that we can all learn from. So yeah, I'm all on
Well, I
board.
think about our friend Marcos Gonzalez, right? And
Yes.
Vamos Ventures and his investment in founders of color and diverse backgrounds, but mostly in Latino founders and the folks over at Mendoza Ventures as well, who
Yep.
are Latino run venture capitalists. So I wanted to bring this up, Nadia, because whenever I'm in Kansas or Texas or Wyoming,
Hmm.
the places that you probably don't
Places
hang out very
you
often,
often visit.
you probably don't go to these places very often.
Not very often.
But if you go through these small towns and they're slowing down, the population is older, oftentimes non-working at this point, their kids are leaving smaller towns. I'm always fascinated that they don't look to immigration and specifically, immigration from Latin America as a way to grow and
Sure.
jumpstart their own economy. So I think a couple of family reunions ago, I was telling my family members from Kansas that towns like theirs should have representatives at the border with big signs, and they should be taking trucks and filling them up and bringing hardworking folks to their town, like younger people, hardworking folks. Some of I didn't get a great reaction
Yeah,
from
I was like,
for
sure you would have got. I was like, what
they,
was the reaction to that
it
comment?
wasn't great. They weren't excited about my plan, but some places have done this effectively, like Dodge City, Kansas, obviously, and based on the numbers and some of the things that I saw in this story, places like the Dakotas, where they probably are bringing workers in to work in the energy economy there. And something has happened in New Hampshire. Obviously, they're getting a huge boost from
Something's
Latino
always
economic
happening.
growth.
Something's always brewing in New Hampshire. Okay, live
They're,
free or die, Rob.
they're maybe that's what it is. Maybe people are attracted to the ethos of New
Yeah,
Hampshire, right?
sure,
All
sure.
right.
Well, that's great. Thank you for providing that information. I'll go on to my deed here. So, Rob, I sent you this article that was in the Harvard Business Review titled Unpacking That Icky Feeling of Shopping for Diverse Job Candidates. So, the overview of the article was basically on the research that was conducted by Professor Summer Jackson, showing that companies are recruiting for a wider variety of lived experiences to their workplace, right? And then it further went on to describe how the hiring managers' fears of seeming transactional can ultimately undermine their diversity goals. And so I think we see it, for example, according to a Bloomberg article titled Corporate America Promised to Hire a Lot More People of Color the Year After the BLM Protests. So for example, the S&P 100 added more than 300,000 jobs and 94% of them went to people of color. So I
Hmm.
think it's suffice to say that there was a general consensus that building more diverse teams was necessary, but how we go about it may show up as problematic, right? Because if we're hiring for certain diversity goals, then how are we looking at the candidates? And so companies were recruiting to meet, these diversity, equity, inclusion goals that they put in place. And the article, Dr. Jackson's research, was a quote unquote uncomfortable feeling that can creep into the recruiting process. It further went on to say that among well intentioned white advocates, there can be a sense that HR is, quote, shopping for people from historically marginalized groups, even when the real goal is to create a more diverse environment. Also, Professor Jackson's research gives a name to this feeling, calling it a repugnant market concern, where she describes the process can feel like it's objectifying or exploiting the people who are involved, right? It could lead to concerns that people might think You're not going, at it for the right reasons. And there's like this aspect of quick hiring to reach goals,
Mm-hmm.
and it's done in like a really transactional nature.
Mm-hmm.
Your reactions, if any?
Well, I mean, I was interested to see where there's a lot in there in
There's a
the
lot.
article that you said. There's a lot going on. There's even like this undercover aspect, right?
Mhm.
Where the writer is with a company and they're making decisions and really learning what's happening in terms of the decisions that they're making.
Sure.
So company wants to diversify, they end up over indexing on hiring younger professionals. And this is absolutely what we've seen.
Yeah.
I guess I shouldn't speak with you that I've seen, right? So
Hmm.
it's a much easier to build up a diverse team or build up your organization with younger professionals, right? To hire senior level people, you need to go outside your network, which is
Yeah.
uncomfortable. And these are the folks that are going to be working directly with you if you are the leadership of the company, right?
Right.
So it's much easier to say let's bring in younger folks. There are a lot of programs that exist to help companies bring in entry level folks, and
Yeah.
so um, and I also looked at that Bloomberg equality
Oh,
study
you
as
did?
well
Okay. Yeah.
in relation to this article, which is
Sure.
really interesting. And so, you know,
Was that a
and it
surprise that I
fits with
brought it up?
and it fits with
Yeah.
but it really fits with what we've seen with, what I'm talking about, right? So after 2020, there indeed were a high percentage of people of color hired into these roles in the companies that they were studying, but
Mhm.
at an entry level and in early career roles. And
Right.
so we don't know if they're still there, what their advancement rates were, and we
Hmm.
don't know how older or more senior more senior professionals of color have fared over that same period of time. So a lot in there, very impressive article, and I look forward to seeing more of the data and research that comes from it.
Yeah, and just to add on top, because the two articles that I'm referencing, it reminded me of the conversation we had a few weeks ago with Meeta Malik, who talks about this in her book in the sense of like language really matters. And
Hmm.
so for me, like, and practices matter too, right? So like HR, hiring managers, the recruitment process, like oftentimes we use language in this process where we like need to hire, and I'm putting in quotes, hire a diversity hire, instead of adding, instead of like thinking of it from the lens of like, how do I source from a diverse candidate pool to really bring and create a more diverse team, right? We are like individualizing diversity. And that to me can breed resentment. That can make people feel excluded. That can make people feel transactional, this notion that Professor Jackson is really describing. So the study was really interesting. Like you said, if people want to read it, go ahead to the HBR article or the actual study itself. But I think this is a conversation we'll probably be having in the next few months to a year, because I do think there's a little bit of harm that we're not acknowledging in the recruitment process when it comes to the diversity goals. So more to come, I'm sure.
Yeah, no, absolutely. No, definitely love that article. Thanks for sending that over to me as well. All right, that's it for the deets. We're going to be taking a short break and we'll be right back with founder, author, and CEO, Rikimah Glymph.
Welcome back, folks. This week on Inclusive Collective Podcast, we welcome founder and CEO of Be Well 365, Rikimah Glymph. Be Well 365 is a wellness brand that provides resources and creates spaces for deep reflection and autonomy to drive sustainable and impactful wellness outcomes. Rikimah's consulting services at Glymph Consulting focuses on business infrastructure development, mentoring, and individual wellness. She is a writer, mentor, advocate for equal rights and opportunity. She previously served as Chief of People and State Operations for Bernie 2020 and Global Director of People Operations for Demagi. She has a passion for improving the lives of those around her, and we are fortunate to have her joining us this week. Rikimah Glymph, thanks for being with us this week on Inclusive Collective.
Thank you for having me. Super excited to spend some time and get a chance to get to know you all and talk a little bit.
Yeah, Rikimah, it's great to have you. Pleasure to meet you. Well, the first question, I want to talk about the book a little bit. So you wrote the book. It's called it's called Total Wellness: A Millennial and Gen Z Guide to Living a More Balanced Life. What are some of the challenges to those generations specifically that require a wellness approach?
First of all, thank you for having me. I'm super excited to be here. Like I said, One of the things that has come through and the work that I've done over the last 15 years is just that for the first time ever, this is really a generation that's got a lot of stuff being thrown at them.
Mm,
A pandemic, mass shootings, uprisings, social injustices all over the world. I mean, you name it. And to add insult to injury, we're all also having kids at the same time. Life is lifing, right? And one of the things that I've seen in the work that I do, because oftentimes I'm consulting with different organizations to support their staff, is, millennials, they are struggling with balance. They're
mm,
struggling to sort of continue to keep going with the same level of rigor and energy that they had, pre-pandemic, for
yeah.
example, right? And so the more I was coaching, the more I was like, listen, this is not a work issue. These guys, some people are occupationally unwell, but this is actually more about like what we talk about when we talk about comprehensive wellness.
Hmm.
Are you environmentally well? Well, how can you be? There's so much going on around you. And if you're in social justice work or, if your population is impacted by some of the things going on or all the things rather, right? That's going to impact your environment. That's not just about your home. It's also about when you walk through the streets and, how you sort of exist in the world. Financial wellness came up for many, many, many of us
Hmm.
because all of a sudden the pandemic meant we were taking care of extended relatives, right? People were losing jobs, kids were home, right? And so that started to shift things also. Our social networks broke down,
Mm.
right? Many, many of us who are used to those hugs, who took for granted those dinners and those happy hours, many of us struggled. And a lot of people were reaching for me,
Hmm.
right? That's where, you see a lot of questioning that's happening with the churches and stuff like that. Folks are like, what is happening? So the book was written because I was like, guys, we can't look to employers to fix this.
Mm,
We have to be the change that we need to see in our lives. The employer is only a smidgen part of that. They're going to pay us. They're going to give us the
mm,
benefits, right? But like, are they responsible for our kids not being okay? Are they responsible for us being up late at night, going down rabbit holes and being stressed out about the world around us? Or are they going to help us with that mild depression that showed up and slipped in on us out of nowhere? Right. So that book was meant to like be something that both said, hey, wake up. We do have things to pay attention to. And in case you don't know where to start, here are a few ideas to try and help you get going as you start your journey.
So, as you know, there have been an increased kind of focus on diversity, equity, and inclusion efforts in organizations over the last few years. And Rob and I talk a lot around diversity, equity, inclusion in the business world. And of course, we're observing like a lack of execution or effectiveness. And that's an impact on everyone, right? From not even just employees, but like consumers, community.
That's
But
right.
you coach many of the folks and say that liminal, not exclusively, but you coach many of the folks in that middle management. And, there's an impact on that middle manager kind of level as it relates to operationalizing diversity, equity, inclusion in the business world. What are some of the other impacts that you're observing as you coach some of these folks?
I mean, I think many managers are losing steam around it, quite frankly, because they're saying, hey, look, we're being told to diversify, but we're not changing how we're operating. Right? Or we're saying in practice, we believe in DE&I, but we're not living out that practice. I think that's one of my biggest frustrations. And it's partly why I decided not to go work internally for organizations
mm,
because I said, listen, I get up every day giving you all I got. But when you tell me you believe in a thing and I don't see you living that out,
Mm,
I've got questions about if this is really what I want to be doing, right? Like, are you performative or are you in practice? Are you in rigor, right? Like, are you disciplined enough? And so a lot of the middle managers are struggling because they say, listen, we bring in all this diversity. We don't know how to retain it.
yeah,
We
hmm.
absolutely
sure.
don't because in practice it sounds good. But in actuality, we're not operationalizing that, right? Like we are not putting safe measures in place to make it so that people feel like this is a home for them also, right? We're going to give you an on board, but we're also not going to change some of the policies that directly impact folks who may be coming in with different levels of diversity, disabilities, right? Like so many in this generation are all being diagnosed with all of these different, ADHD, rampant, right? Depression, rampant, right? Like functional autism has also become a conversation,
Mhm.
right? Yet organizations are still saying, let's turn and burn,
Yeah.
get it done, stay on those deadlines, right? Like,
Get
and
it
yeah,
done. Yeah.
yeah, right. We'll accommodate you, right? Like we'll give you all extra week. But outside of that, you're not going to get anything else. Not really, right? And we'll get you a coach, but we'll get you a coach that doesn't fully understand what you're going through, which means that they can't possibly give you solutions
Right.
that are, that are meant for you specifically, given your set of issues, right? Or challenges. So I think we see a lot of that kind of behavioral stuff going on. I think the biggest thing is that leadership is also in crisis because they want to believe in it. They want to do the thing, right? And even they don't have the skills to really actualize it because it's almost like the blind having led the blind. We're all coming from the same people who trained us all how to behave in the same ways, with the same values, with the same ways of operating. And that unlearning and that sort of acknowledgement that like we don't have it figured out, or reaching for people who may know a little bit differently or better or more, specifically people who are impacted, right?
Hmm.
We're not
Hmm.
even listening to people who are impacted. The last thing I'll say is that we have had an influx of consultants who have all said that they are DE&I practitioners, that they've got it figured out. And then they walk into the organizations and they're essentially imploding these organizations because they're ripping off band-aids, opening up wounds and can't close them.
Yeah.
Right. And so now you got all this primary,
Drama.
secondary, tertiary trauma happening.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
And now everybody's like, the organization did it. You did it. And the org is like, wait, what? We don't even know what this really looks like, what it's supposed to look like. So there's a lot of irresponsible behavior because I don't think people fully understood what they were getting into. And I think that because it's such a new practice, there's just going to be a lot of stuff both that we're learning, but a lot of people who are going to end up being hit because of it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I started laughing, but I was part laughing, part crying. 'Cause I was thinking about the courageous conversation movement, like under the auspices of untrained facilitators and all the damage
Yeah.
that has done. So you talked about the pandemic. And so I want to go about the pandemic, and I think it's over. I don't know anymore. I don't know where we're at, but, has anything gotten better? I was just looking at the LinkedIn top startups, and they're almost all of them are mental health startups, right? Like
Yeah.
there's huge investment
Yeah.
in mental health. Anything getting better, either anecdotally in your world and you being out there and working with companies and organizations and people, or any data that you've seen? What is your
Yeah.
take on this?
Yeah. I think people are getting to a place where they're standing up and saying, I'm choosing me.
Mm.
And as a result, you see people who are leaving these organizations in droves, right? You see people who are unionizing on a fly,
Mhm.
right? And you see the more youthful population, I don't call them youthful because I'm feeling ancient today.
Yeah.
The next grouping that are coming into the workplace, you see them saying, I'm sorry, Mr. and Mrs. Leader. I want a seat at the table or else I'm out of here. And so there is a lot of self-empowerment that's present, right? Like there is a lot of gloom happening. A lot of people are trying to really dig themselves out of what feels like a perpetual lack of joy, right? Because it feels like there's always something.
Yeah.
And depending on how much of the news you're watching, depending on what's happening in your organization, the world could feel real heavy today, right?
Yeah.
But then I see this glimmer of hope because I see people saying, hey, I'm going to start my own business then.
Yeah.
Hey, you don't want to listen to me internally? Fine. I'm not going to cry about that anymore. That won't be a crisis moving forward. And I think that's for several reasons. One, because I think people are just kind of sick and tired of being tired. Two, I think the pandemic did something very different to our mind.
Hmm.
Many people say, I watched people die. I watched people not come back. I watched people change, specifically our friends with long COVID. People's lives changed, right? The school systems changed. Everything changed about how things were working. And so you have a lot of people who say, I don't know if tomorrow's promise, so I'm living today. And so now you're starting to see people spend. You're starting to see people travel, right? And I do think that, like, for whatever it's worth, the pandemic's still here because the numbers are increasing again, right? We know that part. But I think that people have gotten to a place where they have been so petrified of not making it that they are like, now, make it or not, today is going to be a good day.
Yeah.
I'm going to do whatever I want to be doing today because tomorrow's not promised. And that feels like a positive shift. And from my perspective,
Hmm.
because I'm saying part of people's unwellness is that they feel like they don't have agency, right? Or there's something around that agency part. In this instance, I'm saying people are taking back agency, saying, no, no, no. Even if I have to go and work my butt off to make ends meet, I'm going to go do that because that's better than living a lie or being in an organization that doesn't appreciate me. And that feels good. So.
Rikimah, so you talked about travel just now, and that's one of my favorite topics. It's what I do to experience joy, and in some ways I think it's a way that I mitigate my own burnout. And so you offer wellness retreats, and I was wondering if you could share a little bit more about like who are they designed for? What could people expect? Like what are those wellness retreats really all about?
They are designed for folks who are ready to go on a journey. More recently, I have said they're designed for anybody who's looking to do something different than what they did yesterday,
Mm.
because there's so many people that don't realize that they need to be on a journey. I talk to people all the time who are like, I don't know, I just feel blah. That's the word, blah,
Yeah.
right? And so the idea is like, well, blah represents overwhelm in my line of work, right? Like, I know you're overwhelmed. That's what that tells me,
Mm.
right? And
Right.
so is it about the environment? Is it about what's happening in the home? Like, what is it? A lot of people will come hang out also because they're like, we like how you travel.
Yeah.
Because I want to go to Turks and Caicos and turn up. That's what I'm going to
Right.
do, right? And we're going to learn about some wellness stuff. I'm going to take you
Right.
through it all, right? We're going to cry together.
Can
Also.
Rob and I sign up for this?
I'm telling you, yes.
I'm signing up
We're going
right
to eat
now.
lunch,
Yeah.
right? I mean, we always have, dedicated chefs that are going to cook you wholesome food for your body. But if you want trash, I'm going to get in the car and go get that for you. Why? Because wellness looks different for us all, right? And
Yeah.
today I probably want some popcorn, but tomorrow I may want a Snicker. That's okay, right?
Right.
We're going to, we take them through different sessions. So on the one hand, we're training everybody to sort of really think about wellness as multi-pronged. A lot of people are like, when I eat well, I work
Mhm.
out. And I'm like, dude, that's not it.
Mm.
That's like two pieces.
Yeah.
How's your spirit? How's your heart? How's your mind? How's your job? How's your money? How's your family?
Yeah.
Right? Like,
Yeah.
and so,
Very
so we
holistic.
take them through, right. We take them through an educational experience. And we also do personality profiling. A lot of people who know me know I read people for a living. I walk into a room and I'm like, yeah, let's talk later. Yeah. Right. A lot of people haven't spent time to get to know themselves, which means that when they get blue, they don't know to use words like blue because maybe it's about how they've been functioning all along or something.
Mhm.
So the idea is like to take them through a process where it's like, what are some of the communication styles that really drive you nuts? What kind of management stuff drives you nuts? How are you showing up in the world? Because I do believe that like a lot of what we go through also has to do with both our minds and how we're showing up, right? Things can be a big deal if we want them to be a big deal, but they don't necessarily have to be, right? I talk myself off ledges all the time. I'm like, girlfriend, it's okay. It really is,
Yeah.
right? Like you're upset, but why are you upset? You're upset because you had no agency to control what just happened. That's control thing. Go do your work, right? Can't be in control. So we do that, and then we take them through a ton of fun. So you guys want to go out on the boat? Let's do that. You want to have a dance party on a yacht? We can do that too. Want to go fishing? Let's do that, right? And then by the time we're done having fun, we're still doing one-to-one coaching. So
Mhm.
we do a lot of intimate coaching too, because believe it or not, by the time people start journaling and they are in their own spaces with none of the noise, no kids, no barking dog, no spouses, no work, all of a sudden people are left with themselves.
Mhm.
And then all the questions really start to unravel, right? And so we have a journal, we take them through a journal, and it is some thought-provoking stuff that really leaves people, I think, feeling away. And then as we sort of go through that conversation, we've got to repair the things, put things back together. Because the idea is to open it up, to have a dialogue, to create a roadmap,
Mhm.
but to make sure that you don't leave without feeling empowered, like you have a plan for how you're going to get things on track. So, yeah. Is that helpful?
Rikimah's,
Sorry.
yeah, that's great. Sorry, I blacked out for a minute thinking
He
about
was think-
myself and
he was
Turks and
thinking about
Caicos.
the boat.
There was all these great activities, and I was just kind of imagining myself enjoying them. But so let's say I can't go to one of these retreats, and so it's October. Start to get toward October, I start to get super anxious about the end of the year, right? Like I feel like the end of the year
Yep.
starts like October 1st. It's like boom, it's the end of the year, and I get super anxious about the end of the year. So coach me a little bit. Give me some tips to help me through that normal anxiety I think that most people feel toward the end of the year.
Yeah, me too, by the way.
Yeah.
Everybody will tell you, I start going into hyperdrive at the end of the year. Q4 shows up and I'm like, get it going,
Get it
everything.
done. Yeah.
I will tell you what I tell myself. I have to sit down and throw things at the wall. I have to write things down. Rikimah, what's everything that's on your mind right now that you've got to get done, that you want to get done? And then I have to rate them, literally. what is a top priority for me? What do I care most about? If
Mhm.
I don't get this done, am I going to be sad at the end of the year? By the time I do that, I also go into vision moding zone where I'm like, great, here are my top 5.
Mhm.
Because Rikima, you can't be everything to everybody all the time. 5.
Yeah.
Let's pick 5. If you do more than that, good for you. Right. And then I do some vision boarding because I need to roadmap. How am I going to get there? I've been in a process myself right now where I'm like, is it realistic? And where are the pressures coming from? Are you putting pressure? Does your spouse need this thing? And so there's pressure. Does your kid need this thing? So I'm also trying to assess where the pressure points are coming from. Because if I'm the one who's being over here cuckoo for cuckoo puffs, I need to stay in my lane and chill it out. Right. Like I'm telling myself, not that big of a deal. I know what you're doing, but relax.
Yep.
The other thing is that sometimes, like even right now, I have literally sort of basically written my list, taken things off that I'm like, I can get to that next year and I'm not going to be homeless. I'm not going to have let people down. This is so there's not major consequences attached to if I don't get it done. It's
Mhm.
just my ego a little bit.
Mhm.
Right. And then I'm picking the top 2 or 3 and I'm saying, listen, you got 3 months to make it happen. So if you really feel that passionate, get your roadmaps together and go get a team and get it done. That's what I would say to you. I would also say take a deep breath. Make sure you get some rest.
Mhm.
Make sure you place where all the pressure's coming from to make sure that it's, that it makes sense for you. And then I would remind you that we are only one person.
Mhm.
We can only do what we can do. And because you don't get it all done does not make you a failure.
Yeah.
We get to try again next year too.
Awesome.
I feel like I just had a therapy session.
No, I feel better.
This is great. I love it. Like I really so helpful, and I so appreciate kind of that insight. Rikima, we always ask folks for a resource or a tool. I mean, of course, you just offered some. Is there an additional resource that you want to offer to our listeners regarding a best practice or anything related to DE&I?
I'd say, listen, if you're going to do it, you need to make sure that you've done the research and that you have groups of people that actually have hard skills to get this done. I think the one thing that I would say to folks who are in leadership who are proposing this, they just need to know what they're getting into. Because ripping out Band-Aid and traumatizing everybody when you don't know how you're going to contain that container is actually quite reckless and it's more harmful than not doing the work itself.
Well, Rikimah Glymph, thanks so much for joining us on Inclusive Collective this week. Stay with us, folks. We'll be right back with our con reflections and raves and rants.
Welcome back to Inclusive Collective. We just finished chatting with Rikimah Glymph of Be Well 365. Nadia, great time. Did you learn something? Are you feeling better?
Yeah, honestly, yes. No, I mean, I think Rikimah, what she did was like reinforce the things that I feel like I personally learned throughout the pandemic. Like this aspect, so many things were happening in the year of 2020 from like just our environments were shifting, the workplace was shifting, socially things were shifting. So I love her emphasis on like journaling, for example, like a tool that you can leverage to kind of help make meaning of how your feelings or make meaning of your environment. I do that right now. Like that's a technique that we use after interviewing when you're conducting research as a way to help you make meaning of the conversation that you had. So I love that tool. I hope other folks, if you don't use it or don't see it as valuable, consider it or reconsider it because it really is a helpful tool to put your thoughts down on paper and make it a consistent habit. And for many folks, it's therapeutic. So,
Yeah, for
what were
sure.
your takeaways?
No, I appreciated her take on thinking about middle managers and how hard it is for middle managers and organizations to implement DEI. And it really took me back to some of the commitments that leaders made in 2021. And it seems, at least anecdotally, a lot of times the leaders moved on to other things, but then they left their middle managers to try to implement the strategies that they came up with. And so I think that there is definitely a disconnect there. And so I think about the middle management at its core, at its baseline is difficult and you're pulled in a lot of different directions.
Sure.
And so DEI was definitely something that I think, and the way that she laid it out was kind of spot on, at least in my experience there.
Yeah, totally.
So let's rant and rave.
Let's do it. You're first, huh?
Oh, am I
Ranting
first?
today?
Oh, we're ranting. Oh yeah, because we're gonna end on a positive note. All right. So I have to admit, Nadia, so it's end of September, over the summer, I don't pay a ton of attention to stupid things that US senators say.
Oh boy.
You
You don't?
No, I prefer to drink G&Ts and tend to my garden, as you know. But now that we're back in full swing, I did want to take the opportunity to highlight something particularly head-scratchingly, preposterously idiotic that
Okay.
Tommy Tuberville
Oh
said
boy. Yeah.
this week. I don't know if you caught this, but he said that the military is not an equal opportunity employer. He actually said that, he was asked why he voted against confirming Charles Q. Brown. So we've talked about Charles Q. Brown being nominated to be the first Black chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. And Tuberville said that he heard some things that Brown talked about, like race, that he wanted to mix into the military. And apparently that was enough for him to vote
That
against
set him
him.
off.
Yeah. He wants to mix race into the military. So
Oh, Tommy.
So Tubes, as they call him in the Senate locker room, has a history, as you know, of openly racist remarks. Earlier this year, he said that white nationalists weren't necessarily racist. He has only been in the Senate, sadly, for 2 years.
Hmm.
So we can look forward to another several years of overtly racist comments for him. So good luck to us all.
Good luck to us all, and let's reelect somebody else.
Right.
Or elect somebody else.
Anyone else. Maybe anyone else.
Anyone else.
Yeah.
Well, let's move on to, let's end on a happier note. So
Great.
a concert that I regret not going to this past summer was the Beyonce concert. Like, I don't know if you heard about it, but like, I heard great things. And on top of it being like a wonderful show, Beyonce herself got word that a mega fan who waited 25 years to watch her perform live couldn't make it to her concert because he was denied access to his flight this month when the airlines couldn't accommodate his wheelchair because it was reportedly too tall. So the Beehive, who are, Beyonce fans,
Oh, I know.
got together, tagged Beyonce so she would take notice. And then once she found out, flew the fan out to the concert. Super happy ending. And yeah, the fan enjoyed himself thoroughly at the concert.
Amazing. I would expect nothing less. This
Class
is big,
act,
right?
yeah.
Come on.
Total. Well, folks, that's it for Inclusive Collective this week. Just a reminder that if you're looking for diversity, equity, and inclusion and workplace culture strategy consulting, problem solving, or training, you can reach me at Nadia at nasconsultants.com and Rob at takanoconsulting.com. Inclusive Collective is a production of Rifelion Media and edited by Ari Mathey. We would love to hear from you, so send us your feedback at inclusivecollective@rifelion.com. You can find us on LinkedIn, YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok. Be sure to follow us on LinkedIn so you can subscribe to our Inclusive Collective monthly newsletter. If you like what you heard, please be sure to subscribe and rate. We like 5 stars us wherever you get your podcasts today. Thank you again to our guest, Rikimah Glymph. We will be back next week. Be well.
To the left. That's my favorite Beyonce song. That one.
It's a great song.
That's my favorite.
And then left everything you